Welcome to another electrifying episode of the Commentary Booth live via satellite, where we peel back the curtain on your favourite wrestlers and their cinematic inspirations. I'm your host, Jamie Apps, and today we're cranking up the excitement with a guest who has been a key figure in the rise of Queensland wrestling and northern New South Wales wrestling over the last few years. Joining us live via satellite, the Australian Sensation Craven.
Hey man, how you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. Midweek, nice and easy.
Yeah, it's not too bad actually. It's not been a bad week, so it's been good.
Apart from the rain, is it raining up your way?
Dude, it has not stopped. Like, I don't look.
Yeah.
To be fair, I love the sun, but I don't mind the rain either. I guess it's because I'm such a horror fan. I don't mind the rain either because, like, I don't mind the dark clouds and that. But even me, I'm like, I've had enough. You walk outside and you like can't even like your boots are all messy and like your shoes. I'm just like, I've had enough now. You need to stop. So yeah.
Yep. Yeah, it's to the point this year where I'm like, okay, we've got enough. That's enough. Stop.
Yeah, like we do have enough. But yeah, so. But yeah, no, it's good.
So thanks for joining me on the show today to chat about movies and their influence on your wrestling career.
Yeah.
Before we dive into that, though, I also need to say congratulations on the recent engagement.
Oh, thank you.
Sort of somewhat viral after you proposed at the Taylor Swift concert.
It did. So I did propose to my partner, Indy, and I decided to do it because I do everything so low key. Real extra at the Taylor Swift concert, and yeah, it wasn't us that uploaded it. It was some other person, and then all of a sudden there was like 6 or 7 videos, and I think combined they've had over 2 million views, which is just mental. Like I just can't, I can't even tell it. But it was really cool, so thank you, dude. I appreciate it.
How did that all come about? Like, obviously, I can't imagine it was your choice to go to the Taylor Swift concert.
Dude, you're going to be surprised because it actually was. As much as I love metal and I love horror, I have a place in my heart for Taylor Swift, and I don't know why. But my partner is also a massive Swiftie as well. I've actually got on my Instagram profile like dark and edgy Swiftie because it's kind of like an inside joke. No, so we both wanted to go. The first challenge, obviously, as you know, I was spent to Australia, was getting tickets. Like it was a challenge for the entire world.
Mm-hmm.
So once we got tickets, a good 10 months before the concert, I had always thought about proposing to India. I've been with her for about 3 years at the time. Maybe it's the reason that I live in Coffs Harbour, to be honest with you, and moved over from Perth. But when we got those tickets, I just decided I was going to do it there. So that's, we both do love Taylor Swift, which really sends our Spotify algorithm into like chaos. Because 1 minute I'll be listening to like Motionless in White, and the next minute it'll be Taylor Swift. So they probably think that I'm like schizophrenic. But yeah, that's how it came about, dude. And it was a real, like, without sounding really sappy and corny, it was a real like magical moment. I couldn't have pictured it any other way, to be honest. So it was awesome.
Did she have any idea it was coming?
Zero, like absolutely zero, to the point where like the video's up just like online, like on her TikTok. I think I put it on my Instagram a couple of times, but I kind of try to limit my personal stuff on my Instagram. However, Indy and my son and my daughter are on there a little bit. But there's one moment when I like kneel down during Love Story and her face, and she just goes like, puts her hand up to her face, and I was like, I don't even know if she's breathing. Like I looked up at her and I didn't know if she remembered to breathe. So like she had no idea at all. So yeah, it was pretty cool.
That's awesome.
So yeah.
As we shift back to our regular theme, how important are movies and TV in your life outside of obviously wrestling?
Well, I can only prove it one way by showing you. So like, apart from horror, I also love Star Wars. So it's upside down now on the camera. This way, there's a Darth Vader sleeve. I have a full Star Wars sleeve on my arm. Here, I have the dark mark from Harry Potter. So there's the dark mark from Harry Potter there. I've got John Wick on the back of my arm. I love movies, dude. So I've got a pun on my arm, which is, if you can figure it out. Do you get that? Kenny and the Omega symbol?
Yes, I was going to say, is that a South Park reference?
So like it's Kenny and the Omega symbol. So I love it, dude. Like I've also got like Batman all on my leg, and I'm about to get my entire back done with Ghostface, Michael Myers, and Jason Voorhees. So which is why I've got a couple of months off wrestling, because I'm getting my entire back done And when I say a couple of months, my next match isn't till my next book show isn't until the 13th of July. So I've got 8 weeks off and I'm filling my back up. So that's how important they are. I love them to death.
Yeah, that's a big commitment, especially as a
Yeah,
wrestler.
dude.
Like your back is a part of your body that takes a lot of hits. So
Yeah.
yeah, to get that tattooed.
Yeah, man. So, yeah, no, I've drawn a lot. It was actually, it wasn't until about 2018 and that, like, I started wrestling. And when I say wrestling, I use the term loosely. But I took my first bump, whether I knew what I was doing or not, in 2004. Okay, so 20 years this year. I was 15. From 2004 for 14 years up until 2018, I didn't have a character. Like, I chose the name Craven because one of my favorite directors is Wes Craven. Also,
Mhm.
the name was also on a packet of cigarettes that happened to be in front of me at the time when someone was like, "What do you want your wrestling name to be?" in front of 6 people. They weren't mine. And I was just like, "Oh, call me Craven because I like the director Wes Craven, essentially. I'll change it later." And that sort of is how it stuck. From there, up until today, I didn't have any sort of gimmick. I was a very generic wrestler that just sort of traveled. The Australian Sensation part came from when I did my first US tour in 2009, and someone put it on a flyer. I was like, I like that. But it was just like a name, and I was just a generic dude that could do a couple of flips. You know what I mean? Like I never really incorporated it until about 2018, where I went to Mexico, and I'm sure we'll talk a bit about that. But that's when I sort of was like, it was actually Mecha Wolf. He's like, dude, he's like, you can wrestle, but you've got no character. He's like, I don't know how else to tell you this. He's like, what do you love? And I was like, horror movies. He's like, well, do that. He's like, just do something like that. And that's when I sort of started changing my gear, wearing my contacts. I mean, when I go out in everyday life, I wear eyeliner and dress in black. So
And then you get into the ring and you're just a dude.
yeah, dude. He's like, why are you in the ring in rainbow colors, dude? He's like, I never see you outside of here without a leather jacket and spikes on your shoes. You know what I mean? He's like, what are you doing? You're doing it in reverse. And to be fair, I didn't change my wrestling at all, except for adding like a couple little things where I like start biting people's ears or like breaking fingers. That were probably the two moves into my arsenal, my very limited arsenal that I sort of put in there. And I just started changing my mannerisms, working the crowd, because I just started essentially copying my icons. You know what I mean? That was it. Like, I mean, to me, that's how it sort of. But yeah. So that's how it sort of became about.
Do you think that's sort of something that a lot of younger wrestlers don't really understand, that idea of you don't have to do a whole lot to solidify that this is your character? It can just be a lot of couple of small things here and there, and that can totally change the
And
presentation.
yeah, absolutely. Like, and I've been obviously blessed and privileged enough to have some of the younger kids, a lot of the younger, and I say kids loosely, I don't mean that in a derogatory way, the younger generation come up to me and say, hey, Craven or Luke, whatever you want to call me, I don't mind. They're like, can you watch my match and give me feedback? And do you know what? Some of the talent coming through these days is fantastic, but they lack the little in between things. You know, their move set is fantastic, but you know, for argument's sake, they'll do a 450. You know, which will be clean and crisp and look beautiful. They'll pin them 1-2, and then they'll just sort of go, and they won't know what to do next. And I was like, that is what you're missing, and exactly what you just said. So I give them that advantage. I was like, one of my favorite people in the world as far as a movie character, not real life. I'm not going to go slash people up, but I love Michael Myers. Like, I just his mannerisms. I love his backstory. I just love how John Carpenter put him together. And I was like, that's what I started to do. I'll do a move now, and if it's trying to tell a bit of a story, and I did it just a couple of weeks back when we were trying to tell a story to match at Pro League in Brisbane. I will like tilt my head and move just like Michael Myers would. And that just adds so much to the actual spot. And what am I doing? I'm tilting my head and pausing and looking at someone like I'm going to eat them. You know what I mean? Like that is
Mhm.
it.
Yeah.
So yeah. So yes, 100%. If I could, if I could drum that into anyone, I'm just like pick someone that you want to be, or make something up and practice that in the mirror, and just know certain times to put it into the match, and it'll change. You'll actually do nothing extra physical on your body, but it will just change the whole dynamic of what you've just done.
So then the big question is, you've mentioned a few different sort of horror things and Star Wars and things like that. What is the movie or TV show that you've chosen as the biggest influence on your wrestling career?
Well, it's a hybrid. All right, it's definitely a hybrid between The Crow and like 1994 Crow. Um, so Eric Draven, Brandon Lee's rendition of Eric Draven, or if you want to go back to the actual graphic novel, like James O'Barr's rendition of The Crow, in certain ways that I move and speak and sorry, not move, so speak and my like promo wise, or because I mean, if anyone here hasn't watched The Crow from 1994, do it. But like if you watch how Eric Draven speaks, he can be a bit poetic, but he can also be funny and he can also be cheeky and sarcastic while killing somebody, and then throw a serious quote in there. So it's not all screaming and doom and gloom. So I sort of took that and a lot of my um, sort of looks from Eric Draven, and then I took a lot of my mannerisms from Michael Myers, and that would be to the point of like, how I move and look, or like the best way is to show you, but like if I hit a move and then just if I need to like make a dramatic look and just sort of like look back and just stare at people, and then especially because I got my contacts in, it kind of creeps a few people out, which is cool, So just deliberate small movements. So it's sort of a hybrid between those two, is what I'm going for. Whether I'm pulling it off, I don't know, but that's what I'm going for.
Yep. Yeah, that's what I've found doing these live via satellite episodes. A lot of people, they have like, this is the core thing that I started with, and then they've pulled bits and pieces from a lot of different other areas to make it not just a straight carbon copy of this iconic character.
Yeah, exactly. Because then people would just look at you and be like, "Oh my god!" I mean, "Oh my god, he's trying to be Michael Myers or something." So I mean, if I came out in a blue jumpsuit overalls with a white mask on and boots, it's probably going to be pretty obvious. But and there's only very rare cases in the wrestling industry where that works. I mean, a recent example, if anyone's heard of it, would be the indie wrestler that came out as like Blue Kane. And he literally was just a rip off of Kane, and he went blue and snow. You know what I mean? That worked for a very limited time until he got his cease and desist letter, so seen on social media. But that worked. But the longevity of that, in my opinion, doesn't hold out. And we've seen it before. Was it what's his name? Was it Jay Lethal that did Macho Man? Like the Randy
Yep.
Savage ripoff?
Yeah,
I
he
can't
did
remember.
the
Yeah, so like
Black
he did it
Machismo.
for a while, but the Black Magic, but it's sort of the longevity of that will always die. If you're ripping off something else, in my opinion. So you have to sort of create your own sort of style and hybrid and stuff, which is what I'm trying to do.
Like, even when we look at The Crow, like obviously the most iconic wrestler to sort of take inspiration from that is Sting, but he again evolved it and like pulled in elements of the Joker and other elements to make it his own, not just a straight, I'm Brandon Lee's The Crow.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, even to the point where even to the point where there was that iconic entrance that he did, but he didn't. I don't know what type of bird he had. It was like an eagle or something, but it wasn't a crow. But it was very much a, like a rip off in a loose terms. I don't know the way to put it, but no, he did very much evolve it, which was fantastic. So which I loved. I love that. So if you're going to copy something as a straight carbon copy, it's never. It may work for a bit, but it's never going to have the longevity. But that's one of the things when I did my training in Florida. I do remember it was Dusty Rhodes and Steve Kern, and they always said, "Don't be afraid to steal something in wrestling if you can do it better. But if you do it the exact same, it's never going to last. You're going to have to change it a tiny bit." So, so that's sort of something that stuck with me all the time, and I'm always trying to be creative in that way now because I didn't do it for so long because I was so worried about everyone wants to see like a perfect back bump or a perfect front bump or I have to hit this perfectly when really that's in all honesty that's probably only 30% of the battle, to be honest. Because fast forward to 20 years into my career, I look back at some of the most successful wrestlers of all time, and they probably had 4 moves that they did really well, and it was just all character work. And it took me a very, very long time to get that, like a long time. So, and like I said, Mecha Wolf, who's probably one of my best friends, he said the exact same. He was Mr. 450, like like from Puerto Rico, and you know, and he started to do some stuff and wearing the Puerto Rican flag, and then he was like, until he, and then he tried to do his Super Saiyan gimmick. If anyone's ever followed him, which was successful, but then when he really tapped into what he loves, he's just blown up. You know what I mean? He became this mechanical wolf, and like it's just awesome. So yeah, I mean, he's been NWA Tag Champ, and he's headlining AAA now. So that's just it's just finding that niche really.
Yeah, like I think if you look back at the history of wrestling, there's only maybe a handful of guys that you can look at and go, oh, they got over because of their technical prowess. Like someone like a Bret Hart. Everybody looks at him.
Yeah, a handful is generous, and that a part of me, the wrestling fan inside of me, that breaks my heart because like you go up to anybody in the world, honestly, and they say anyone in the world, and you ask them who John Cena, Stone Cold, or The Rock is, right? The Rock's pretty much he can't even use him anymore because he's a Hollywood actor full time, but even though he's back, you ask them who John Cena and Stone Cold are, they'll know who it is, right? Even though they can wrestle, obviously, and they're very, it's because and Hogan, sorry, it's their gimmick that got them over. You ask anyone who Perry Saturn and Dean Malenko are, and they'll have no idea who you're talking about. But or Lance Storm, for God's sake, and you give me people that can out technical wrestle Dean Malenko and Lance Storm, and I'll have a beer with you because they are phenomenal. You know what I mean? Like, does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. Like when you look at the casual audience, it's character that people connect with. It's not the in-ring elements, but then when you get into sort of the wrestling hardcore bubble, then you find and like wrestlers themselves, it's people like Bret Hart, Dean Malenko, um, even Brian Danielson, who's sort of on the edges of both.
Oh, don't get me wrong though. Like I am the first to admit, like I um have a big thing with people being like, oh, wrestlers or workers, sorry, can't be marks or they can't mark out. Dude, I am the biggest fan there is. Like, I will be the first to tell you that I absolutely loved John Cena in his prime because who didn't? Like, and if they tell you that they didn't, and even chanting John Cena sucks brought enjoyment to people. You know what I mean? The guy's a mastermind. Stone Cold, like all, even Hogan. I mean, I loved Warrior too, for God's sake. He's on my hand. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, this way. He's like a little Warrior thing. I love Warrior too. I think Warrior had 3 moves. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
But he was colorful and he was energetic and he connected with the crowd. So I love the connection with the crowd, and I am the biggest, well, like self-proclaimed mark for that too. But I also really appreciate technical wrestling because it's what I love. So that's yeah. I guess I'm a fan of it all, but it just does break my heart when you can see some of the best technical wrestling. Even like people know who Kurt Angle is, but even like Kurt Angle, you know, Bret Hart, Malenko, like we all said, even Perry Saturn, even though he had his little gimmick with the mop, they were just fantastic. You know what I mean? So they were fantastic on the mat. So yeah.
Like I think even if you look at Kurt Angle, the moment that his career really took off was when he lent into the silly comedy side, and then people went, "Oh, wait, he's actually a really good wrestler as well."
Yeah, yes, and you're completely right. And then yeah, especially and he's always going to be known for because when they just started, testing my memory now, but when they just started with the Olympic gold medalist stuff, the people were like, but then when you're right, when he did the comedy stuff, started coming out with Milk, you know, and just you know cowboy hats and all that sort of stuff, then people were like, yeah, this we can vibe with this dude. You know what I mean?
Yep. As we go back to The Crow, how were you first introduced to it, and do you sort of regularly go back and rewatch it and revisit it for a bit more inspiration?
It's funny that you say that because like we just brought this up the other day. So when we got back, this is a bit of a side story. It's like a side quest. When we got back the next morning after I proposed, Indy was like, we were just having a joke, and I was like, so do we need to write like a contract or like you know about like and I was being, like not an official contract. I was like, okay, now that we're engaged, I don't want you to yell at me if I leave like 2 plates in the sink or something. And then she's like, all right, well, I don't want you to yell at me if I leave my makeup right. We were just being funny or whatever. But one of my stipulations was, and it's been my tradition for as long as I can remember, on Devil's Night or the night before Halloween, I always watch The Crow. Like always. I don't care whether it's during the day, during the night, I always watch it on October 30th. So yes, I regularly go back. I watch it more than once a year, but I always have to watch it on that day. It's just something that I've done for as long as I can remember. I was introduced to The Crow, I think I was around about, I'd say 16 or 17. And I remember one of my friends at the time, um, his name was Peter. I haven't seen him in, God, 20 years now, but yeah, 15, 20 years. But he was like, hey, you should check this movie out. And I was like, oh, cool. It's like, and I remember he described it to me. He was like, it's about this guy that comes back because he gets murdered and he just, I don't know if we can swear on here, so I'm not going to, but he just F's everybody up. And I was like, oh, that sounds cool. I'll watch it. And I just fell in love with it straight away. Like, I remember I watched it and then I didn't even realize that Brandon Lee passed away filming that movie. Like, because I just watched it, and then it wasn't until like a year later, I was like, oh yeah, I love this movie, and they're like, oh, that's the one that like Brandon Lee died filming. I was like, what? No, he didn't. He's like, yeah, he did. And then I started looking it up, and I was like, this is amazing. Like, yeah. So that's sort of how I was introduced to it.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, there's a very big sort of rich history to that movie these days in retrospect with all of that sort of stuff and like the curse of the crow and things like that.
It literally is a black vortex of a rabbit hole. Like, there are so many theories behind that alleged curse of the crow, or whatever you want to call it, or like the Lees in general. But I just think I really don't like the one thing. This is like a little pet. I really don't like that people do blame the success of that movie on the fact that he passed away for it, because that not only was like a massive breakout role, it was just it's literally a cult classic in my opinion. Like, it's a cult classic when it comes to thriller slash. I wouldn't really call it like a full time horror, like thriller slash semi horror movie. But yes, in my opinion, it's a cult classic now. Like, you can't. Um, and believe it or not, I am not. I am not a. I'm not opposed, or I don't dislike all the sequels or like the Stairway to Heaven show that's come post it. You know what I mean? Don't love them, but I don't dislike them. I don't have any hate for them. I mean, people absolutely, if people know what I'm talking about, people absolutely despised Wicked Prayer, and I was like, I disagree. I didn't mind it. Like, I really liked it. Like, and then I asked people why, and if you ever meet me, well, now, and I hope that we do meet in real life, we were chatting before the show, and you might be coming up to where I'm working soon. But I'm never an argumentative person. Like, I don't argue. I just love getting along with everybody. But I will disagree when someone says to me, like, I really hated The Wicked Crow. And I just say, why? And then it's like, because Eddie Furlong was in it and he's meant to be in Terminator. I was like, that's not a valid reason.
That's it.
You know what I mean?
It's
It's
a
not
movie.
a valid reason at all. Like I was like, they had a great cast. They had Ellie Furlong, Tara Reid, and it was fantastic. Like, it was good. So yeah, I mean, yeah, that's just my history on that and how I love that movie.
That is a silly reason to not like a movie. Like, imagine if that was the rules for every movie, where every movie had to have a totally brand new cast. Nobody could be in a movie in two
Yeah,
separate movies.
and I think it's because I don't know why. I mean, I have heard other theories of it. It's like it's set sort of like in the desert, and it's very yellow and bluish color scheme to a movie, if that makes sense, where the crow's meant to be like dark, But if you really look into it, the way that they do the movie and things happen is very based around. If you ever go to Mexico or look into like that sort of like Mexican horror and voodoo and that sort of stuff, that's how the movie works. I thought it was I liked it, but people don't. So yeah.
Obviously, we have the Crow remake coming up with Bill Skarsgård in the lead role.
Yes.
How are you feeling
Yes.
about that remake?
Okay, look. The best way to put it is that I'm nervous. Okay, I'm very nervous because I'm very torn. Skarsgård as an actor is phenomenal. He absolutely did so much credit to Pennywise. Fantastic, right? I liked him in John Wick, right? I think he's a phenomenal actor. From the trailer, and I have watched the trailer breakdown extensively, I'm nervous because I get the best way to put it is I get John Wick 5 vibes out of it, like very too much hardcore, that sort of fight scene action, which obviously, like I said, I've got John Wick tattooed on my arm. I don't dislike it at all. So I don't know how it's going to go. My only, at this stage, and I haven't obviously seen the movie, but I will be there and watching it. I wish they didn't refer to it as, like, some people refer to it as a remake, a reboot. I just wish they just referred to it as a new era of the Crow, or a new, like, because they're calling it like a reboot or a remake, but um, there's no Sarah in the movie, so that's going to be bizarre. You know what I mean? There's only Eric Draven and Shelley Webster, from what I can tell. I know, if you know history of it, Sarah was only like a standing character. She was never meant to be anything, and then she sort of evolved into this kid that Eric and Shelley looked after, and was like, not their parents, but looked after her because her mum was, disgruntled and working in the sex scene and drugs and stuff. But I mean, she was a really big part of the movie. You know what I mean? So the fact that that's not in there, so the best way to put it is I just want to wait and see, and I'm nervous. Like, I'm nervous. Initial reactions, I was like, I don't know, but now that I've watched the trailer breakdown a few times, I'm just nervous. But I have faith. So yeah, I have faith in it. So yeah.
Yeah, my partner, who's also a massive Crow fan, is very similar. She's very apprehensive about it. She wasn't a fan of the character design. Felt it looked a little bit too Jokerish.
Look, I got a lot of those comments. My initial reaction was exactly the same, but the more that I look at it, the more I'm like, okay, and I do this thing a lot in my life where I ask myself why. And I was like, why don't I like it? I was like, the tattoo placement and stuff, completely, that's just to modern times. I get why they've done that. The short hair blew me a little bit. Like, I was like, I don't know, but the more that I look at it, I'm like, I'm gonna go into this movie, and because I was exactly the same as your partner, I was like, I saw it. The first thing I saw it, and I was speaking to a fellow worker actually at Pro League, and I was like, and he is also a massive Crow fan, and I looked at it and I was like, I'm gonna hate it. And then we talked and we talked, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go into this movie and just forget that I've seen anything else, and I'm just going to enjoy it for a movie, and then I will nitpick it. You know what I mean? Like, so that's what I'm going to try and do. So I'm going to go in, and I don't know if I'm going to have to go to the doctor and get some Valium or something to wipe my memory, but before I go in. But that was a joke. But yeah, like, I'm just going to go in and enjoy the movie, and then I'll probably go back and watch it a second time, and then I'll be like, okay, this is what I like, this is what I dislike.
Yep, yeah. Especially, yeah, when they're sort of doing a new modern interpretation 30 years later. I think that's the only way to go into it. Let's just see what it is for what it is.
Yeah. However, speaking of that, I don't know if this is happening in Australia, and I'll be really, really, really upset if it doesn't. But something popped up on my social media, being the 30th anniversary of the Crow. Apparently, cinemas are re-releasing it at the end of May, which I will be stoked, because that's something that I've never got to do, is see the Crow in cinemas. So hopefully it's not like an exclusive to the US thing, because one of my favorite pastimes, I love going to the movies. Like, I love it. I will. Indy actually works FIFO, so she works overseas. So she goes away for a period and comes back. So I'm by myself for periods of time. And I love the movies. Like, so if I get to watch that in the movie, it's like a bucket list thing. You know what I mean? Like, I've never got to do it before, so that'll be really cool. So I really hope that happens, because apparently they're re-releasing it for the 30th anniversary in cinemas.
That'd be very cool. So then, in terms of the wrestling, what are some of the specific elements you mentioned? Sort of how he talks and things. Are they the main things that you've pulled from the movie and then woven that into the character?
Yes. So, for example, current storyline that was pitched to me by Pro League in Brisbane, Pro Wrestling League, was I'm currently I've just formed a tag team with another worker called Zach Reynolds, but Zach and I have had, like, we've had a few matches, and we've had like an ongoing Queensland rivalry over most companies for the best part of like 2 or 3 years, to be honest with you. And then they did this thing where Chris Stink has his tag team therapy and brought me out as his tag partner to see if we can work together. We ended up very apprehensively, if that's the word, working together at the start of the match, but sort of told the story that we started to gel by the end of it. Where I'm going with this whole story is things like how Eric Draven talks, where he's just before he like says something to Shelley or his victims. I mean, couple of his most iconic quotes is like when someone's yelling at him, he turns around and says like, "Is that gasoline I smell?" Just like that sort of stuff. I sort of interpreted that into the match where we told this story where his ex-tag team partner was in the match, and it got to a spot at the end of the match where like I hit the destroyer, and instead of going for the pin, I sort of turned back and looked at him and sort of like put that voice onto the crowd and looked directly at him, and then I was just like, "He's all yours." And then tagged him in and let him have his revenge on his tag partner, and then went and did a suicide dive to take out the other guy. You know what I mean? So yes, as far as his talking and mannerisms, that's what I like to put into it. And the fact that I've started wearing a long cloak to the ring, which isn't exactly the same but very similar. Eyeliner, contacts is just more of a fear factor thing. But yeah, that sort of stuff is I have pulled from Eric Draven, but I've sort of made it my own because I didn't want to just paint my face white and do close up because that would look exactly like it. So I just wanted to do different things. So the fear factor of the eyeliner of the contacts and why I decided to go with bright white contacts is sort of a knockback to his white face paint and then just put my own eyeliner on and stuff like that. And and the last thing which you would know because it's on my Australian wrestling trading card is obviously when I had a last payoff feud, this is back years ago in WA, I had a feud sort of blowout match with a worker called Delhi Dud Singh at SHWA Ascension. I carved revenge with makeup obviously, and I carved revenge across my chest, which you can see on the card. That was obviously a knockback to the whole Crow story because my soul couldn't rest because he cost me the title and he was meant to be my best friend. You know what I mean? So just stuff like that.
Yeah, very cool. You're now working up in Queensland and sort of helping to build that scene up. How has that whole process been?
Look, it's been fantastic. The workers here, Queensland has always had like good talent, and you know what? It's never always had bad companies or whatever. But I think it just needed just a little push. Certain companies need a little push in the right direction. My probably biggest influence was with Wide Bay. So with Wide Bay Pro Wrestling, I sat down with the promoters, Anthony and Kate, and owners back in like 2019, and we had because Wide Bay didn't have a very good name back then. Let's be honest, it didn't, and it didn't produce a very good product. And I was like, okay, I don't want to be Booker. Just let me pitch a show to you. Put it this way. And let me pitch the next 3 shows to you. And if you can, I'm not going to be like, hey, just bring all my friends in. But let me just bring in one of friends from each state. So I ended up bringing in Richie Taylor over from Victoria came over. One of the workers from Jules came over from WA. He paid for his own dime, bless him, to be honest. And back then, he just happened to be in the area. But Jackson Spade from Suplex came in. But it was new faces. And then after that happens, I reached out to Bobby Bishop, and we've been friends for a very long time. And I was like, hey, man, you've got your school going on. This company's starting to build something, but they've got the same talent. They're all the way up in Maryborough. Can you supply some guys? And he was like, yeah, I could put the name out there. And then I reached out to probably the most influential person in Wide Bay in Todd. And Todd I was like, originally he was like, I'm not helping you with Wide Bay. And then I was like, man, just give it a chance. He's like, okay.
Classic Todd, have to twist his arm to get him to do anything.
No, I just said, and do you know what? And that's sort of where my involvement ended because I just wanted to work. Like I was just like, okay, I'm moving over to Coffs. I've either got to drive, 3 hours up to the Gold Coast, and I was doing Venom shows, but I wanted to get on Pro League, but the talent there was like stacked at the time. And why? But there wasn't a lot of companies. So I was like, if I can help build one, then it will give me another place to work. Because not only Sydney's the other way, like in all honesty, it's 6 hours the other way, and I am in no like illusion. The talent that Sydney have at the moment, you know, it's phenomenal. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's people at those schools that are struggling to get onto cards.
You've got to be Adam Brooks level, Mick Moretti level, or whatever to just come in. And to be fair, I'm very real. Like I have worked for a long time, but I'm not that. So I'm not going to rock up and be like, hey, you know what, guys, want to put me on? And they're probably going to be like, hey, we appreciate the reaching out, but we have so much talent here. You know what I mean? So so I was like, okay, we'll build something over this way, and I never got knocked back by them or like BWA or anything like that. But I just knew, I just looked at it and I was like, I go to these shows and watch them, and they are phenomenal. You know what I mean? Like, why would they change any of that? Their talent is top tier, literally. So yes, and then I reached out to Todd, and Todd was like, I'll give it a shot. And then that was sort of like, I just wanted to work, and Todd has, the best way to put it, he's turned water into wine. Like that, Wide Bay is now one of the most consistent companies when it comes to drawing fans. Definitely up in far north, like North Queensland. You know, they draw fans. They put on a fantastic product. Todd obviously also works with Bobby and that with Pro Wrestling League and stuff. And from what started there, now there's like Pro League, Wide Bay, QWA, they all work together. You know, 3 count, they all work together now. Like it's fantastic, and it's just started to spike, which is just awesome, man. Like there is nothing better than seeing. Well, one, I don't know how many I've got left in the tank. Like I'm 36 this year, so I don't know when I'm going to be hanging up my boots. But I want a product to go on a Saturday night and watch if I want to get away. You know what I mean? So why not help build that? Because just because I stop lacing up my boots doesn't mean I'm going to stop going to wrestling shows. Like I love wrestling. So yeah.
From the outside looking at Queensland, the distance was probably an issue as well. I didn't realize how far away a lot of these companies were. Like I was looking at, this QWA, Wide Bay, and Pro League have like 3 weekends in a row, and I was like, oh, I'll go up for a month and like stay at my cousin's, and I can just drive to all these shows. And then I realized QWA is like 7 hours north.
That's like a 12-hour drive from Pro League. Like, so
yeah.
We'll put it this way: I do Wide Bay. I don't do every Wide Bay show, but for me, I do Wide Bay. And I will be there on July 13th. And I've only done one other show this year, but for me, it's a 16-hour round trip drive for Wide Bay. Wow. So it's 8 hours there, 8 hours back. Pro League is a lot less, 3.5 hours from here. So that's manageable. And they're really cool. Like, and when I do have Pro League shows, living in Coffs Harbour, I absolutely love it, but there's no big shopping centre. So I'm just like, okay, if I've got a Pro League show coming up and I need to go and get something from like a big shopping centre or like Robina or something, I'm like, I'm just going to put it down on a list somewhere. I'll go when I next go up to Pro League, I'll go get it. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So yeah, I sort of like work my life like that. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because I just looked down and was like, oh, that'll be cool. I can just go up and I can just take my car. I can drive to all these places. And I was like, oh, wow, these are a lot further apart than I thought initially. They're not like an hour drive to the next show, which is a testament to them all building their own audiences and crowds.
Yep. Yeah. So, and there's nothing around like where I am in Coffs. There's not a lot. I mean, IWA come here and they do a tour once, and it's been like every time Rob has like reached out and he's like, hey man, we've only got like a rumble spot or we've got something, but we're literally in your backyard. Do you want to do something? The first time I got booked there, I got COVID. The second time I got booked there, I was back in Perth because I had to work Christmas because my shoot job is I work in a prison. And I had to work Christmas, so I was like doing my Christmas like a week later because it's always in the first. And the third time I was out there, I was wrestling in Brisbane. And I was like, oh man, I'm always missing these shows, and they only do it once a year. So I'll eventually get there one day, hopefully. But yeah, so there's not a lot. There's no wrestling that comes to Coffs Harbour like ever. So yeah.
Oh, there's a potential opportunity down the line for once you do hang up the boots.
There could be. I mean, there could be. I mean, there could be, and I have mentioned it. I have mentioned to like especially Bobby with 3 count and stuff, and Pro League, and I said, hey, and Wide Bay especially. I was like, hey, if we could ever have the opportunity to do like like a tour show or something, that would be really cool, because there's nothing that really comes here, and the things that do come here, like, they're always packed. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, there was one point that my partner told me, this is pre-COVID. It was like a thing that Shannon Knoll would play here once a month, and every time his concert was packed. I was like, how many times can you do the same show? You know what I mean? But not a lot of things come here, so it would be good. So, yeah, you never know.
Yeah, awesome. So looking ahead, you mentioned was it Pro Wrestling League on the 20th?
20th July.
And Wide Bay the week before?
So, yes, so I've got Wide Bay the week before on July 13th, Pro League on the 20th, and then my next official bookings. I don't know when this will air, but I am going to be at the Venom show on, I think, next weekend. But I'm literally just, because I have to go up to Brisbane that day, so I'm just going to be there to hang out. I'm not doing anything, but also, if, in all honesty, I'm one of those guys that if I'm not on the show, I'll be in the crowd. So I'll be in the crowd cheering and just helping other people out, watching their matches and stuff if they want me to. So I'll probably be there, but I'm not booked for that show on actual choice, because I've started the back tattoo, and then but I'm not showing anybody yet until it's all done. So, but it's, yeah. So I've got to take a few months off while I get 40 hours of tattooing, I reckon, at the end of it. So
it's gonna your back's gonna feel worse than after a crazy match.
Oh man,
a hardcore match.
I couldn't think of anything. You know, like, I couldn't think of anything worse than taking a bump right now. I'm not gonna lie to you. So, yeah.
Alrighty, so where is the best place for people to support you and track your wrestling journey moving forward as well?
Look, I'm very active on Instagram. So at TAS for the Australian Sensation _Craven. I have a Facebook, but I barely use it. I never got around to getting a Twitter or an X or whatever it's called now. So it's just Instagram, really. There is a YouTube channel out there, and they're all like the same hashtag. But but mainly Instagram, and I always try to reply to everybody. So if anyone ever messages me in that, I always try to reply and say, thank you. Or and if people want to just message me, like I said, my partner's away for quite a bit, and I'm originally from WA, so I moved here. So 90% of the time, if I'm not at the gym, I'm like at the movies or watching movies at home, or playing Warcraft. But so feel free to send me a message if you want to talk horror stuff, and feel free to send me a message if you see the new Crow movie and you want to debate about it. Like, that is going to take up. Well, it was going to take up majority of my June, but now it's been pushed back to August. So probably majority of my August. So yeah.
Awesome. All right, we'll put all those links in there. Thank you for listening to the Commentary Booth live via satellite. If you enjoyed the show, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe on podcast services and on YouTube. You can follow me on social media at JamieUpsMedia and at Pario Magazine. Thank you for taking the time to chat with me, and good luck with the back tattoo, and we'll hopefully catch up in July.
Yeah, that'll be awesome, dude. Thank you for having me. It was great. I always love talking about this stuff. So, yeah.